Well, we've assembled the Brains Trust here as England are heading for their 5-0 hammering at the SCG. We'd like to look firstly, guys, at what's gone wrong for England. Just one or two little things. I mean, it's a massive story, obviously, but what for you, Shane, has been the real thing that's gone wrong for England?
I mean, there's more than one or two for me. But I think if you've got to pick, the main thing for me is Alastair Cook hasn't been in charge enough. I think there's been too many people captaining the team. I don't think he's used enough instinct. I think there's been too much of really him not being in charge. I think the tactical side of things, they've had their chances against Australia nearly every test match in the first innings to bowl them out for a cheap score. Brad Haddin, yes, got runs. The tails wagged and got runs. But I just think some of the tactical things, like even yesterday, think back to yesterday, I think Australia were 4 for 90 or something, and there was three. Rankin comes back to bowl. There's three people back on the fence for the hook. He's bowling bounces when the other 24 wickets have all been pitched up.
To a guy that nicks off for a pastime, George
Bailey. So there's just been some really horrific tactical misjudgments, I think, and I'm not sure if that's from Andy Flower telling Cook and Cook not trusting himself enough or not experienced enough. But for me, really, he hasn't been in charge enough, and I think tactically they've been poor.
For you, Derek?
Well, I mean, there's basic. We haven't got enough runs, and I think Mitchell Johnson's been certainly a major influence in that. He's bowled quick, and it just shows really there's not that many bowlers around like him, that pace, and it's shaking England up. They've not been able to get back on their feet, and before they know it, they're 2-0 down, and of course then morale goes. Two guys have gone home. Jonathan Trott, Graham Swan, that's done even less for morale. Suddenly you're up against it, and you're battling hard. I mean, as Shane said, we've actually been in good positions bowling wise in all first innings bar, say Adelaide, they're like 240 odd for 5, but the other ones all been low scores for 5 down. Obviously whatever plans they've had for Brad Haddin are the wrong ones.
But that's an interesting point though, because a lot of people have blamed the England batsmen for their failures against obviously Mitchell Johnson, and then the tail enders for being blown away, and yet actually we're highlighting there the fact that England's bowlers haven't capitalised on 4 positions when Australia have been 140 for 5, and then the Haddin and Johnson and others, Steve Smith,
but I don't think it's the bowlers.
Rescued. But so you're not blaming the England bowlers?
No, well, I think at times they haven't bowled well enough at times, but I think they've bowled pretty well to get Australia in some tough positions. And Haddin's made over 400 runs or whatever, but if they had been tactically better, I think they could have knocked Australia over a lot cheaper.
So what sort of?
And I'm not just trying to pick on Cook, and I know I've been, I've said it through the last series as well. I've just seen some things there you just think, what are you doing? I don't understand it.
Well, certainly Alastair Cook, I think the first innings at Brisbane, he kept Swan on too long because Mitch Johnson came in to join Haddin. Left-hander, he thinks, well, Swan gobbles them up for a pastime. Actually, Mitch Johnson played really well. Kept him on too long. Let him get in. He started hitting it around. By then, Australia back
630
in the game.
they were too.
Back in the game.
So I mean, is it a question really, in a way, to put it in a nutshell, perhaps England have used the strategy of 3 years ago, which was to make lots of runs and then apply the pressure with accurate bowling. That was their blueprint 2010-11. Maybe that blueprint is a bit tired and it hasn't worked because the batsmen haven't performed and the bowlers have been a little bit over the edge in terms of Anderson and Swan.
Yeah, I just think that, I think back to the last Ashes series too, and Australia weren't good enough when they got themselves in positions, and that's why England won 3-0, because they weren't quite good enough, Australia. It could have easily been 2-2 that series.
In the summer.
In the last Ashes series in England. So Australia weren't quite good enough. England in this series here have got themselves in position, but they're not quite good enough at the moment to then finish Australia off, and that's been through tactically bowling changes, all those things.
I mean, over here the new ball is really important, and both teams have had the other team in trouble, but the difference has been is that Mitchell Johnson with the old ball can still frighten you out and get wickets, whereas England have struggled. Haddin and someone else have always got them back on track.
Okay. And don't underestimate Nathan Lyon's role. And I'm not trying to pump Michael Clarke up, but the way he's used Nathan Lyon, Mitchell Johnson, Harris and co, I think he's been outstanding. As well as his field placements and attacking, he can be in that position to do that, but he's used them well. Cook over bowling Swan. Any doubt, bowl Anderson, 8 overs, 9 over spells, has to come back. So I just think they've been tactically better, Australia, they've been better also. They've played a more aggressive brand of cricket, and I think if you're in doubt about what to do, if you go on the aggressive approach, you're not going to go too far wrong, and I think that's what England have gone on, the cautious approach. Push fielders back, and it's allowed people to get in and make singles, twos, and the tail to wag.
Looking ahead, firstly, you're obviously critical of Cook. Would you keep him as captain for England?
Well, I think he's got to give a bit longer. I think he's just got to see how he responds from this. This is the good test for him now to see how he responds in the next year or so. They've got, I think it's Sri Lanka for a couple of test matches in June, India. And then India for 4 tests. And I'd be waiting till the end of the English summer to say, rightio, where are we at with our team? Because I think a few of these guys are going to be there or thereabouts. There might be 1 or 2 little inclusions. But the use of the spinner, I just want to, I know you've said move on, but I just want to, one point about the spinner. We go back to Melbourne Test match. Monty Panesar, 111 for 1, chasing 230, comes on to bowl his first over after he's bowled Joe Root for 4 overs already. Here, Borthwick, the game's over. He bowled a couple of overs yesterday. He bowls his 3rd over when Australia were 250, 10 minutes ago before lunch. He ends up with a few wickets. Just no faith in the spinner, no anything with the spinner. And if you look back to Lyon, he's bowled around the wicket. England haven't had any plans for him. Now, I don't know why they haven't swept him. I don't know why they haven't tried to go after him a bit more or what. And so
England have been stuck with a sort of a blueprint which they haven't been able to move forwards or adapt. Clearly, they're not adaptable. But you give Cook a bit more time.
I would give him a little bit more time.
Derek, would you?
Absolutely. Alastair Cook's delivered a win in India, which hasn't happened for 28 years, and he's won an Ashes series. And he's only just over a year old as a captain.
Yeah. And we know Michael Clarke.
He's been around the game a long time, but I just think
he's a perfect person really to be captain. He's great. He's a good. Well, I don't agree with that either. I think he's a good bloke, Alastair Cook. Yeah. I think he's got a good change room. He's got respect from his teammates. He just has to improve tactically.
Well, he's a guy, at least from the front. Of course, it's gone badly for him with the bat, so therefore, what undermines him slightly.
What about the coaching setup then? So we're keeping Cook as captain. What about the head coach, Flower, and all his support staff? Are there too many? Does that need changing?
Well, I think that the ECB have to go to Alastair Cook, and they say, rightio, how do you want to captain this side? Because it should down to the captain about who he wants. And if he still believes Andy Flower's got lots to offer, then that's fine. If he thinks it's time for new ideas, then they need to look at that too. They should ask the captain, not make these decisions. He has to now take charge of this team and say, this is the way we want to play, this is the brand of cricket we want to play, and this is what I stand for. Because the wins and losses goes against his name. So I think he's got to start trusting his instinct better and say, these are the people I want around. I think Graham Gooch should stay because I think he's a very good batting coach. Andy Flower should stay if Alastair Cook wants him to stay. If there's some new, fresh ideas, then go and look for them.
KP, Michael Vaughan was fairly outspoken in the press today, saying he should be second vice captain or second in command or something, and get him more involved. Where do you sit on that one?
I think it's difficult for someone who's been captain once to be, have a reduction in power. You're better off in the ranks, I think. But KP is a senior player. He's got a great lot of experience, and Michael Vaughan's other point was that he's really good with the younger players. But he can still play that role without having to be vice captain. I think he's just worried that Cook is not getting some good advice now. I mean, Graham Swan was his right-hand man on the field. He's left the game.
Pryor's
out at the moment.
So would you go with that? You'd like a bit more involvement from KP? He's a bit detached. I mean, I've noticed him in the last couple of days.
Too many times on the fence for me too.
All he's doing is a photo opportunity to sign autographs. He doesn't seem to be involved, which seems a bit of a mistake. Either use him fully or not at all, it seems to me.
Well, I think the point Derek's making is a very, very good one. You'd love him to be more involved. Does he need to be vice captain or that to play that role? To me, I think he's got a wonderful cricket brain. I lived with him for 6 months. I sort of saw the way he thought about the game, and I think he's got a very good imagination. Obviously, when he became captain, it was a tough time in English cricket then with the coaching staff and things. So, is it time to revisit it? Is it feeling too much pressure on Cook if he starts to become vice captain? Someone has to be vice captain, and at the moment, Pryor's out, Swan's gone, so it might be a good time to actually make someone vice captain. To put KP vice captain and see how he goes is probably not a bad thing. I'd probably do it.
I mean, again, part of Michael's point was you need someone to think a little bit differently. The management team and the captain, he's saying all thinking along the same lines, and you need someone maybe to stir that up a bit. Just look at it from a different viewpoint, and that's a good point. But perhaps they might change some of the management.
What about the wicket keeper? I like Pryor. I think it was a mistake to drop him, but in a way, he
saved his career.
It perhaps saved his career because he was looking shell shocked. And
he plays the last 2 Test matches here and gets nothing, and keeps keeping the way he was and fumbling and all that. There's no comeback because they give someone an extended run over the summer, and that's another year then. And he's just about gone. So I think it's actually he'll start the first Test match.
Because he's actually become a better keeper for not playing the last 2 games, hasn't he?
Realising what they're missing.
Realising what they're missing, yeah. And Johnny Bairstow just looks
his batting, his technique's all over the place.
Well, against someone quick like Mitch Johnson, he's he's got problems.
Yeah, and you talk about Mitchell Johnson. Carberry's another thing. To me, he played really well in the first few Test matches, and it must be very hard for him to go out there and bat with Alastair Cook, who's not making any runs, under pump with captaincy, facing in 20 odd years of playing first class international cricket. Mitchell Johnson has bowled unbelievably well. And Harris, don't underestimate Harris. That combination must be very tough for the new ball and the opening batsman. And when you walk out there in a partnership with Alastair Cook and he gets knocked over all the time, it's got to be hard for him. So I hope they give him a bit of an extended run too. So
you wouldn't say move Root up to open?
No. Root should have stayed down at 5 or 6 the whole series, and Bell should have been number 3 right from the word go.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, we've been saying that. We got bored actually saying that, didn't we? I mean, we all said that.
I think I agree with Shane to a point about Michael Carberry. I think he's looked calm and collected until they've gone round the wicket to him, and then he's got no answers.
Yeah,
okay, so we've looked at the batting order there for England. What about bowlers? Obviously, Swan's gone. Spinner, that's a big thing, isn't it? Who do we pick? Who do we?
Well, I think Panesar would have bowled really well on this. Finger spinner on this sort of wicket would have bowled really well. Borthwick's got something off there, but we didn't see enough of him. He come on to bowl, he bowled his third over when it was all over. So, whether he can bat a bit, he bats at 3 for Durham.
Have you seen anything of his?
I've seen a little bit of him.
To say, yes, he's got some potential?
Yeah, I mean, how many overs have he bowled? 10 overs, 11 overs in this match or something? Maybe a bit more, but I'd like to have seen him bowl in Sydney where it's turning, under the pump a bit to bowl. And that's what he's been picked on the side to do, bowl.
Trouble is, the way I think England approach the game is to kind of, create pressure, etc. Someone like him, unless they're taking wickets regularly, they're going at 6 and over, and it's hard to keep the lid on it.
I mean, you played your first Test, was it here?
Yep.
And you
150.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, it's a good place to bowl spin.
Bowl
but not
50 overs, though.
But not if you're a novice. You can see something in him then, can you? You can see why they selected him.
Yeah, I think he's got enough there where he spins the ball, and when he lands we look good. He just bowled a little bit of loose stuff, and that's understandable because he's playing his first Test. He's probably nervous, he's bowling a tough time. He wasn't used very well, he had pretty ordinary fields. If he had a regulation field in his first over, he would have got a wicket at short cover.
But I think even at county level, he's not kind of the regular first spinner. I mean, they've brought him in occasionally, Durham, to be their solo spinner, but often they pick another guy as well. So
you think, in a way, that between you, that Panesar and Borthwick is actually not a bad situation to have, and that, just need to believe in them a bit more, give them a bit of time. Maybe.
Yep, and if you're going to continue to play Stokes and guys like
you don't
play
need as
Stokes
many
as an all-rounder, that's right. So if you play someone like him,
so it gives you a 4-seamer attack with the spinner as your 5th option in a way.
Yeah, or you could actually play Panesar and Borthwick. Two spinners, and you still got Stokes. You might go with Borthwick and Panesar, because Panesar will do a job like a 3rd seamer as well. He bowls pretty tight and doesn't go for too many runs, and then you can have your leggy because Borthwick bats, Stokes bats. If Bresnan comes back into the fold,
so you'd have Bresnan back, would you? You don't think he's a busted flush? I thought he was just a little bit down on pace and perhaps a little bit of a yesterday's man, really.
I'm not sure. I think he's still got a lot to offer.
Maybe in England he could still do a job.
I think he's still got a lot to offer.
I think we've just seen a wicket behind us, and there it is.
Tim Bresnan's still the right side of 30.
Yeah, I think he's still got a lot to offer. I wouldn't be writing him off. I think he's got something about him too, and he's a goer.
Quick bowlers, Finn. Where do we stand with Finn now? He's not bowling well. Have we ruined him? Should he come back? What do we do about that? Because we need a bit of extra pace, don't we?
Well, to me, even Tremlett in Brisbane. Tremlett didn't bowl with his normal firepower, bounce and hostility, but he still bowled pretty well. He bowled economically. From there, they just decided to pick 3 big fast bowlers on the tour, but never play them. So how do you go from Tremlett in the first Test to not getting a game somewhere like Perth, when you want to play the all-round in Adelaide? That's fine. How do you not play him again and give him another chance? Or go back to Finn or whoever else? They didn't bowl one of them. And they bring Rankin in here when it's all over. So I just think they've got selection in that all wrong. And I suppose when you get cloud in the head, you're trying to fit gaps all the time. And they've just got it wrong. But I think they've got to have that. They've got to have something. Broad's, I think, bowled well. I think everyone's been disappointed with his batting, but he's bowled well. Anderson, the last 10 Test matches, you take out that first Test match at Trent Bridge, his last 9 Test matches have been poor, and he's looked tired. So he obviously starts the summer, but then how he finishes up, he's got to start taking some wickets.
Mitchell Johnson scrambled more than the minds of England's batsmen. He scrambled the management's mind as well, and the guys who picked the team, because they've gone for kind of hedging a little bit, someone who can maybe get them 30 like Tim Bresnan, rather than, at Perth, as Shane says, you've got to pick a tall bowler.
You picked 3 6'8", 6'9" bowlers. You don't play one of them in Perth.
I think they felt that Rankin wasn't quite ready for it. We saw here the tension got to him, he got cramped at the wrong time, and Finn, I've been watching with the tour games, he has bowled.
He's gone backwards.
I
think too many people are talking to Finn or something. I don't know
Finn
what it is.
Finn doesn't want to worry about where his feet are. Just make sure you don't knock the stumps over. Just go a bit wider on the crease. Hit them as hard as you can, as quickly as you can, and that's what fast bowlers do. I mean, I would say, he's a tall guy, good athlete. Just look how Dizzy Gillespie got bowled. Just copy that template.
Yeah.
Simple.
So it doesn't sound to me as if, although England are going to go down 5-0, there is a total kind of revamp of everything within the team. It sounds as if you both feel, and I feel as well, that the culture needs a bit of tinkering, and that I do feel there's a bit of tension in the team, which isn't only about losing. It's about they feel that they've got to perform at every juncture, and there's a sort of a very heavy analysis and an extra attention on them all the time, and they feel a bit rigid and tentative. Maybe the coaching culture is a bit too intense, perhaps. I mean, Lehman has obviously had an influence by relaxing the players a bit more.
The fun.
Yeah.
They've had fun, and it's obviously easy to have fun when you're winning, but I think it started in England. Look, although England have been 5-0 here, and they've been beaten horrifically and badly every test. I mean, the first 3 tests they've set over 500 runs to win every game. That's never happened in the history of the game. And then we saw Melbourne, how quickly they got the runs, and now we're seeing here in Sydney. But it's a bit like the 3-0 whitewash or 3-0 in the last series in England. There were signs there, though. So there's signs there with England that they've got themselves into positions where they could have knocked Australia over 150, 200. So it's not bad. It's ended up being bad, but along the way they've had good enough signs there to say, okay, let's just not panic too much. But I still think that everyone needs to look and say, right, start from the coaching staff, let's work our way down. Are they the best person for the job? Do we need an input of this? And if the answers are, no, we're going to stick with what we've got, that's okay. But as long as they can see improvement, there's got to be an air of looking forward, a bit of a plan and an improvement. I just think they've lacked a plan since that first test in Brisbane. I think
where they were almost taken aback.
Don't underestimate the job that Mitchell Johnson, just with that sheer pace and harass the way he bowled, and then the way Australia batted. I think England just went, we didn't expect that.
Yeah.
And they'll come out and say, we knew Australia could play well, we didn't underestimate it. I reckon that's absolute rubbish. They underestimated Australia.
They had a slightly fractured preparation because of the weather, and they landed in Brisbane, and then 3 things hit them: Mitchell Johnson, the local press, and the crowd. And it just absolutely took them by surprise.
Yeah, and I think they've been in shock since then too. I think they've just and what you said before about cloud, all the decisions seem to be panic with no plan. They've got away from their normal plans, and that's what, when you get rattled, can happen.